Imagine coming to a new mysterious land and getting to experience as a foreigner what it's like to go from being a slave or a servant to being able to rub shoulders with one of the most important historical figures in Japanese history. And for all of that to happen within the span of like 1 to 2 years. This is the story of Yasuke, because they had Yasuke as a samurai, and this started a whole debate. Was this guy actually a samurai or not? Why is he in there? Is this forced inclusivity? Let's just start with where Yasuke's story starts. One of the people who actually is responsible for the majority, or not the majority, but for like a lot of the writings that we have about Yasuke and his life in Japan, the one and only Louis Fruis. And when he first comes into Japan with these missionaries, the people of the city they were in, specifically, they came to meet one of the most famous Japanese warlords of the time, the one and only Oda Nobunaga. This guy was the man. As they entered the city Kyoto, on their way to Nobunaga's palace, the people of the city were going crazy. They were shouting and yelling so many things, blasphemies and etc. And I feel like you can only imagine what it would be like to be those missionaries who Yasuke came with, but then also Yasuke himself, where you're coming to this new land, this new place, and these people are just going crazy. He was almost like exotic for like what the Japanese were used to seeing. They weren't used to seeing black people, but it wasn't like a common thing. Now the thing about Yasuke is that a lot of people claim that he may have been a slave when he came to Japan, but some scholars actually do say that we don't actually know. He was probably more likely a servant, and he might have been a slave from Ethiopia who would fight in mercenary armies in India, and which India would be the place where he would be sent back to after his stay in Japan. When Nobunaga seen Yasuke for the first time, he was actually very impressed, and so were many of the people of Japan. This man was tall, dark, and handsome. Some of the records say that he was at least over 6 foot, and he also had a really good physique, you know, kind of similar to myself, you know what I mean? No, I'm only 5'11" though. I don't know, but some people even suggest that they got intimate. But yeah, no, it was actually very interesting. The mentions of his skin color, they actually compared it to ink. They said his skin was as dark as ink, and they even had him scrubbed to make sure that, you know, it wasn't fake, that he didn't just paint himself. They would not believe. The interesting thing too is that in the text they actually mention him as a kafir, which is like more characteristics of the people who lived during like in Portuguese East Africa, you know what I mean, at the time. But yeah, Yasuke's story, Yasuke had it pretty nice while he was in Japan. He was given a stipend, a little short sword, some money, a place to stay. Like this man had it all set for him, bro. The townspeople took a lot of notice of this, and people had even claimed that Nobunaga had made Yasuke a lord, which big status, like that's actually, could you imagine, bro? But besides these things, Yasuke would also be noted for appearing near or next to Nobunaga during certain great events. And for example, Yasuke was mentioned accompanying Nobunaga during an inspection after Nobunaga had defeated one of his long-term arch enemies, the Takeda clan. I really hope I pronounced that right. Listen, I'm not Japanese, so don't come for me in the comments, please. I don't want to hear anything. But unfortunately, it would all come ending for Yasuke during the Hono-ji incident. Basically, Nobunaga was forced to commit suicide.
Now, all that is left for me is an honorable death.
My lord, if we barricade the side entrance and force them to enter through the gallery halls, we can bottleneck their forces and then cut them down in waves.
I appoint you, Yasuke, as Kaishakunin. This is my final command of you, my friend.
And while all of this was happening, many of the soldiers, I'm assuming samurai, of Nobunaga would have been killed by people allying themselves with the general who betrayed him. But Yasuke had allied himself with the son of Nobunaga, his prince, who would fight on the behalf of Nobunaga. Unfortunately, after fighting for a period of time, Yasuke was eventually caught. They said, "You don't have to be afraid, just give us your sword." He gave them the sword, and then they were like, "Okay, what do we do with this guy? He's black, like he's dumb, like just send him back to India." samurai or not samurai, which is the big controversy which you probably came here to. And now when it comes to all the controversies about Yasuke and his life, I feel like the general story is what people get right, but where I think people run into the most problems is when we start to make interpretations. It's never explicitly mentioned inside of the text. As far as his origins go, there were a few origins. There was the Habshi origin, which I explained earlier. Basically, he was some sort of slave, maybe some Bantu slave from somewhere deeper within Africa, who got taken from Ethiopia. And these Habshi people would basically fight in like slave armies or servant armies in India. And from India, he would have been picked up by the Jesuits and then sent to Japan that way. That would have been how the story arrived. Another theory from a very controversial scholar, Lockley, he wrote the book African Samurai. He believes that he came from my tribe, which is the Dinka tribe of what is now Southern Sudan, and he basically thinks that he was enslaved by like Northern Sudanese Arabs and then traded and ended up into India and Japan that way. And then there's the third theory, and this is the most commonly and widely accepted one. It's the one that I agree with once I've kind of let go of my fantasies of wanting to be a samurai. I'm joking. And that is that he came from Mozambique, otherwise known as Portuguese East Africa. And the thing for me that really sealed the deal was that I found a piece of writing from around a few decades after the whole Yasuke story happened, so like around 1620 something. I'll put his name and picture up. He's the one who wrote the book where basically he talks about the origins of Yasuke, and he kind of mentions that he came from at least from the translation I got from ChatGPT when I ran it through, because I think he wrote it in French. This is the most reliable piece of information that we have for Yasuke's origins. He was somebody from Mozambique. And then there's the whole question of whether he was samurai or not. And honestly, I don't even know. I've been researching this for a while, but then I took a break from it during August, so like I'm kind of rusty. But then the people who argue against him being a samurai, they say that it would have been such a rare like situation that if he actually was samurai, they definitely would have, like somebody definitely would have wrote it down somewhere. And there are people who argue that he was only a retainer, not a samurai, this, then the third. The thing is, samurai in the traditional sense, the meaning of samurai at the time would have just meant the servant of a lord. But it's the only time we like have it on record that he actually did fight on behalf of Nobunaga. The reason why he couldn't have been a samurai, or not even that he couldn't have been a samurai, but it was more like Yasuke liked having him around because he wanted to keep Yasuke around because he liked him. And another thing too as well, like a lot of Yasuke was probably like at least what I hear as well, is that he was like a status symbol to Nobunaga, simply because of how exotic he was, at least for Japanese or the Japanese people of the day. Thing is, there are certain things that I feel like you can argue for and against whether he was samurai or not, so I'm not going to make any strong statements. I will say though, him being a lord definitely could help the argument. But then there was also another piece of information. A lot of people argue that Yasuke was a samurai based off of him having a stipend. Maybe it's not their only reason, right? But that's one of their strongest pieces of evidence. He had a stipend, he was given this, he was given that, he was given a short sword. Therefore, he must have been samurai. And my friend found something that would actually make you give pause to such a statement. Because Nobunaga apparently had held a tournament for around, I would think, almost like 1,000 wrestlers. He held a wrestling tournament with around 1,500 people, and he gave all of the winners stipends very similar to the one that Yasuke received. And the reason why this is kind of interesting is because the only actual picture, painting that we have that could be Yasuke, so we don't even actually know if it's Yasuke or not, but most people say that this could likely be Yasuke wrestling in front of Nobunaga. So it does add like a bit of like a nuance to it. But then also the thing about stipends though is that there are also people who say that Nobunaga had also given criticism to other lords and other people who have given stipends improperly, or I guess it would have meant to other people that he felt were unworthy of the stipends that were given out. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you don't hate me for if I said something you might have not agreed with or whatever. But if you're interested in learning more about Yasuke and seeing some of the sources and some of the research that I did for my own video and any further research that I'll do, I actually have a free community. It'll be the first thing in the description. It'll be like, it'll almost be laid out as like a course, but like it's for free. You don't have to pay for it or anything. And it'll just be all the videos, resources, links, and kind of notes, as well as, you know what, if you guys want it, not even if you guys want it, you know what, I'll also give access to the script that I had for this YouTube video, and it will have like my research, like all the research and etc. on it, and all the pictures as well. So if you really want to see that, if you're interested in looking at that, first thing in the description. That being said, thank you for watching the video. Peace, subscribe and like please, because we need it. That's the song.